I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter for, now that I look at the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You have seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh! It is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I am quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing that one should talk about in private. I simply just want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. The cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cicely happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algie.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some ants are tall, some ants are not tall. That is a matter that surely an ant may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every ant should be exactly like your ant. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an ant being a small ant, but why an ant, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It is Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I've ever saw in my life. It is perfectly absurd you're saying that your name isn't Ernest. It's on your cards. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I'll keep this as proof that your name is Ernest if you ever attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cicely, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come, old boy, you had much better have the thing out at once.
My dear Algie, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It's very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Well, that is exactly what dentists always do. Now, go on. Tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret bunburyist, and I am quite sure of it now.
Bunburist? What on earth do you mean by a bunburist?
I'll reveal it to you, the meaning of that incomparable expression, as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me, in his will, his guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cicely Cardew. Cicely, who addresses me as at her uncle, from motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have been buried all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algie, I don't know whether you will be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And as a moral high tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness. In order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name Ernest, who lives in Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algie, is the whole truth and pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, in modern literature, a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. You should leave that to people who haven't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a bombarist. I was quite right in saying you were a bombarist. You are one of the most advanced bombarists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest, in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down into the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I have been really engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know you are absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You had better much dine with your Aunt Augusta, then.